Hey everyone, how are you doing? Welcome. I'm Bill DeWees. I am so excited that you are here tonight. I've been working hard and preparing this and looking forward to our time together. And we're a little early, so we're not kicking this off officially yet. We have about 2 minutes. But I wanted to say for those of you who are here, awesome. I'm very excited that you're here. Hey Keith, how are you? If you would just take a second and in the question box, just if you would let me know where you're from. And if you want to say I'm new, intermediate, advanced in voiceover, that would be great too. Let's see what we got. Andre, Baton Rouge, awesome. Naomi, Oceanside, California. Mike in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Tom in San Antonio. From Baltimore, it's Nancy. Bellevue, Washington, Dwayne. Lamar and Benjamin in Utah. Cool. Naomi, brand new at this. We've got Johnny in Visalia, California. From Washington, Gabriel from Maryland. David in Savannah. It is Chad. Kimberly in California. Awesome, you're new. I'll get Teresa's a newbie as well. Good to have you here, Teresa. Randy in San Antonio. Oh my gosh, I mean, this goes on and on. Hartley, California. See, we got a lot of West Coast, Seattle, Michael. Let's see, Adrian, Alex, Mississippi, Boston. Just getting started. It's James, Alicia in PA, Richmond, BC is Samita. Tom, James, Butch in Kansas City, and I'm just going to Rio Vista, California, Jory, Denoni, Rob, Mark, Philip, Lee, Jared, Lori. Oh my gosh, I feel like remember the lady on Romper Room at the end of the show, and then I'm dating myself. If you don't remember it, it means it's because you're younger than I am. She would look into her magic mirror and say, "I see Lori, I see Kelly," and I would always get so excited when she would say, "I see Billy." So, guys, it is 7 o'clock my time, Chicago time, Central time, straight up. And again, I'm very excited you're here. My name is Bill DeWees. And for the next 4 weeks, we are going to be taking a look at the business of voiceover. Um, I'm going to take about 5 minutes up front just to go through some administrative things and talk about a few things that will help to set up this class. First of all, just by way of introduction, I started in voiceover in 2006, 14 years ago after being downsized from a corporate job. I was working in the corporate training space. And before that, I had done a number of things. I'd worked for a business consulting firm. I'd been a college professor. I had worked in radio. I'd managed a station. I'd programmed stations. I was on the air and station. I'd done all this broadcast and teaching. But here I found myself, losing my job. And so for me, voiceover was my Hail Mary pass. And I'll be honest with you, I was just looking to survive. And here I am 14 years later, and I have achieved a level of income and lifestyle I never thought I would, quite honestly. And it's been my pleasure and joy and honor to share this business and how to do this business with hundreds of, well, thousands through my YouTube channel, but hundreds of clients and students that I've actually worked with, face to face and through sessions like this. And so glad to have you here. And with the whole coronavirus thing, I have a business partner on the marketing side of the voiceover training thing, Fred Gleek. Many of you know him. And Fred and I were talking and saying, well, what can we do during the coronavirus to help people? And the idea was to do this course that would cover, give you a good overview of everything in voiceover at a really affordable price. And I think it must have struck a note because we have just a fantastic turnout. So again, so glad you're here. So let's look and see what we've got coming up the next 4 weeks. Tonight, week one, we will look at technology, the tools you need to get the job done. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. I am not an audio engineer. Everything that I do, I've had to learn myself. I'm not highly technical, but I was able to figure it out and I know what's essential. And so therefore, I say that so that you don't become intimidated. I'm not an engineer talking engineer speak. I'm just a guy, who figured out how this will work. And I speak in very plain layman's terminology, and we'll get through this tonight. Looking forward to that. Next week, the 23rd, we'll talk about performance, how to give your best performance behind the microphone every time. Week 3, we move on into marketing. And that's something that I'm particularly excited about as, background working as a business consultant and marketing consultant. And, it's great to have to know what to do behind a mic and have a great sound. But frankly, there's plenty of people who are talented who don't work. It's because they have no idea how to market. So we're going to be looking at that. And then on week 4, we'll get into your questions. So, which brings up the point, as you have questions, and no doubt you will have questions. The way this is designed is we're going to save the entire 4th week for just Q&A to help clarify and to give answers. So as things come up, make a note of them because most likely we'll be looking at that in week 4. Okay, so just make notes of those things so you don't forget and bring them back with you in the final week. And there is one thing that I know for sure, again, after doing this for 14 years and having worked with so many people, the main determining factor of whether you will be successful in voiceover or not has actually little to do with your level of talent. And it has everything to do with your mindset. Now, as I say that, you may be thinking, yeah, right, Bill. And let me tell you, trust me, I know plenty of very talented, I mean, people who just ooze talent, people that I'm envious of, voiceover talent who rarely ever work. And by the same token, I have students that I've worked with who are, are they're just regular people. I mean, if you were to sit down and have a conversation, you would think the thought of them being a voiceover talent would never cross your mind. They're not the kind of people who somebody would say, hey, you have a great voice, but they've been very successful in voiceover because they understood, they had the right mindset. And if you look at this picture, the left side of the picture, that's a scarcity mindset. The right side is an abundance mindset. Now, and let me just share briefly, when I first started in voiceover, you may remember I said 2006. That was 2 years before the bottom fell out of the economy. And so what I did during that time was I just knuckled down because I knew in my mind, and here's what happens, human instinct is to think, oh my gosh, it's all going away, we're losing it. There's nothing more, there's no work out there. That's the scarcity mindset, and it's a lie because there's always enough. The question is not, is there enough? The question is, where is it and how do I get it? And if you're asking yourself those two questions, you will empower yourself to find answers, which is why you are here tonight. And during that time, not only did I maintain, but I grew rapidly through the recession. And here, during this pandemic time, and again, for some of you guys, $97 for a class was not a big deal. For some of you guys, this was a major commitment. But you've come here because you understand that it's not because there's a lack. It's just a matter of finding out how to get to it. Where is it at and how do I get it? And that's what I'm here to teach you. And keep this in mind, that voiceover is not a sprint. It is a marathon. All right. So you've got to be thinking long term. You're not going to get rich overnight. And if you think this is a get rich quick scheme, then you came to the wrong course because that's not what this is. Yes, you will make money. And yes, you may make money very soon. But in terms of building a sustainable and significant and sizable income, it's something that you commit yourself over a period of months and then eventually years to where you get 6 figures and then can go on from there. But it's about setting your sights longer than just a day, a week, or a month. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And this is one of my favorite pictures. I love this guy running a marathon. And I don't know if you can see it or not. On the back of his shirt, it says 50 fat diabetic ahead of you. It's not about how pretty you are. It's not about how pretty you sound, but it's about how dedicated you are to getting it done. And that's what we're here for. So a few notes, all sessions are being recorded and these will be made available to you at the end of the 4 sessions. So you will have access to this. You can watch and listen to it as many times as you want forever. And don't worry if you think you've missed something, as you'll be able to go back and reference the class at a later time since you'll have the recordings. And as I mentioned before, questions are in session 4, so write those down as you go. The focus of this course, this is really important. Have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule? The 80-20 rule says that 80% of your productivity comes from 20% of what you do. What we're going to do in this course is we're going to focus on the 20% of information and activities that will make the biggest difference, that will give you the 80% or more of what you need. It will make the biggest impact. One thing I know from doing this for so long and working with so many people is most likely you've got 101 questions buzzing around your mind that you think you need answered. And I understand because I've been there, but let me tell you, there's only 5 or 10 things that you really need to know and understand. Most everything else is a distraction. And what I'll help you do is focus on the things that will give you laser focus to make it effective so that you can get the results that you want. All right. Some of this information you may already know. Some of it you may not. You may not know any of this, but keep your mind open as we go because you'll be reminded of some things that are important and you will learn new ideas and concepts. And again, focus on reestablishing the fundamentals and incorporate these ideas as we go. And don't try to do everything you learn at once. All right. Implement and be strategic and be methodical in what you do. And if you do, you're going to get good results. Okay, well, a couple other quick notes. This is not a hardware and software tutorial class. I'm going to teach you governing principles, but you may need to learn the specifics of your equipment and your software on YouTube, the manufacturer's website, etc. It would be impossible for me to teach you the ins and outs of every piece of hardware that you guys own, because there's so many pieces of hardware there, and they're all different. The software is all different. So to be able, it would require hours and hours and hours just to do that. But I will give you the principles that you need to understand, but you may need to go deeper, like with Audacity. We'll talk about that in a moment. There's hundreds, if not thousands of hours of YouTube tutorials for that program because it's a free program. Success in voiceover requires dedicated time and effort. So find time consistently, whether it's 5 hours a week or 40 hours a week, and stick with your plan. Growing a business is like growing a garden. Time and constant attention are required. Okay, so McDonald's versus voiceover. Ta-da! McDonald's versus voiceover. What is that all about? The title of this course is How to Start and Build a Six-Figure Voiceover Income. Did you know that the average McDonald's franchise generates about $100,000 a year for an owner? And what does it take to get a McDonald's franchise to generate that $100,000? At least $1 million, upwards of $2 million. And voiceover, literally for $150, the cost of this course and a low-cost microphone, you can be in business. I literally spent $300 when I started because I had to buy a computer too. And this may sound a little goofy as you hear me say it, but let me tell you, it is absolutely true. So let's get into it. Technology, what you need to know, and just as importantly, what you don't need to worry about. Bad audio is a career killer. I'm going to repeat that again for emphasis. Bad audio is a career killer. I've worked with a lot of students who have done everything they think they're supposed to do from a marketing standpoint, from a business standpoint. They audition hundreds of auditions, and I say, send me some test audio, something you've done, and I can tell within 3 seconds. Their audio is awful, and they don't even realize it. And it's not their fault. I mean, you're not an audio engineer. You haven't been around this long enough. But it may be, if you've been trying to do this without success, it could be your audio is your problem. So tonight, we're going to talk about, this is really the first part of your product. Your product is not just you speaking. It's the actual technical audio, the waveform, the file, the audio file itself. And so we'll be talking a lot tonight about the sound chain and the audio signal chains. You may hear it, equipment chain, you may hear different terms, but the idea is everything that's involved in creating your sound. In this simple little diagram, you see the microphone, the cable, the preamp, and then, whether it goes to an actual, like a digital audio recorder or your computer, that is your audio signal chain. So today we're going to talk about everything that goes into that. And it's important that you understand all of these things because you'll need to be working with these elements and doing some experimenting to find something that will work for you in your particular situation. Now, here's a question for you. What has the greatest impact on the quality of your audio? And literally, if you would, just go into the question box and right now just put in, what is it that you think makes the biggest difference in the quality of your audio? I'm curious to see. Microphone, environment, microphone, mic placement, your space, the source, the sound treatment, the room you're in, noise floor. Okay, and then it goes on and on and on. Okay, thanks guys, I appreciate your feedback. A lot of people said microphone, and I think the biggest temptation of most people, even if they know that's not the truth, if they want it to be the truth, most people think it's the microphone because I think it's easy to put your hands around. It's a microphone. If I'm not getting the results I want, I'll just go buy another microphone. And we'll talk about microphones, but that is not by far the most important aspect of your audio. The sound chain, the audio chain the signal chain begins with your recording space. I know that doesn't sound exciting and sexy, but that's the truth. It is the space in which you record. That makes a bigger difference, the biggest difference, more than anything else we'll talk about tonight. Your recording space, the space in which you work, will make the biggest difference in the quality of your audio. So let's spend a little time and talk about that. Okay, we're talking about your home recording studio or your home recording space. There are two two principles that you need to understand that we're going to deal with. One is the quietness, or this, soundproofing, and the other is the dryness of the audio. And what dryness means, dry audio means with nothing. Like, for instance, there's no reverb, there's no echo, there's no reverberation, there's no bouncing of sound waves against the wall. It's sound absorption. So you've got soundproofing, and then you've got sound absorption. Okay, they're two different concepts, but they're both very important. And by the way, that picture on the left under the heading quiet, soundproof, that is a picture of what many believe to be the quietest room in the world. It's in Minnesota, and it literally is so quiet that it is said you can hear your heart beating as you stand in the room in your ears, and that if you're left in there long enough, it will literally drive you crazy, because human beings cannot stand absolute silence. We think we know what silence is, but the truth is we don't know, because none of us have been exposed to it, at least not for any length of time. But we're going to try. Nobody gets to absolute soundproof in the home recording business, but we're going to get as close as possible. So quietness and sound acoustic treatment, or sound absorption, and how dry the audio is. That's the other thing that they're shooting for. Okay. So the first thing is, we find a quiet space. Let me throw some thoughts and ideas out to you. A closet. I started off in my bedroom closet. It was walk-in, but it doesn't have to be walk-in. I was fortunate enough that that gave me a little bit of space, and my wife allowed me to have my half of the closet. The big trick with a closet, or really any room, if you can, it's not always possible, but if you can, avoid an outside wall. So in other words, if you have a closet where the wall is to the outside of the house, best to find one where it goes out to a hallway or another room, but not to the outside, because if you do, you have less protection between you and outside noise. It's not always possible, but if you can, do that. A spare bedroom might be your best option. The basement. Some of you guys have basements, some of you don't. I have a basement. That's where I'm located right now. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn off my camera there. It just reminded me that was on. I guess we don't need my mug up there. The basement is, if you can get below the terrain, below ground, that is usually the best place you can be. Again, you may not have a basement, and if you do, you may not feel like it's, it might be kind of cold and damp. It may just be a matter of throwing a dehumidifier down there and just fixing up a corner of it, but it's something to at least explore. Garage, there are some people who use their garage as a recording space. And then, and by the way, let me just stop there for a moment, because these are non-paid options. These are non-paid options that you have, and you always want to start there. And it's, and the assumption here is that you're not working with a huge budget. Most of us, when we first get started, we're not working with huge budgets. And so I would want to warn you against going out and running up your credit cards to, going out and spending thousands of dollars on equipment and booths and cables and mic stands and all kinds of crazy stuff. You want to have what you need, but there's often solutions that are available that you don't even realize. And that's why I want to give you these options to explore. And it's important that you actually explore the options. In other words, go into these spaces, sit there and listen. Check them out at different times of day. Maybe one room is quieter in the morning. Maybe another room is quieter in the evening. And overall, you might find, and I just say this from experience, because I remember the last house I lived in, I had been upstairs for years in the closet, and I thought that was my best option. But actually, this is after a couple of years, mind you, I finally realized that my basement was actually better. At that point, I hadn't figured that out yet. So spend a little time up front, and that can help. Now, there are paid options. There are things like this little room I'm in. It's called a whisper room. Now, a room that I'm in, 3.5 by 5 feet, is going to run you brand new about $3,600. But through the magic of Craigslist, I found this on sale. There's a media production company that was selling it for half that price. They had owned it for 2 weeks, mind you, and sold it for half price at $1,800. So you can find deals out there. And so whether it's a Whisper Room is a brand, Vocal Booth is a brand, or there's DIY booths. If you go on YouTube, you'll find places, or you'll find videos where folks are showing you how to build your booth. Now, and if you don't find absolute zero quiet, don't feel bad. Nobody does that works from home. There are always dogs to deal with. There's toilets to flush. There are neighbor kids playing. There's always stuff. And so, there are times when I have to stop recording because there's something going on that I can't avoid. So it's just part of the gig. Now, here's an option that a lot of people don't think about, and that is the interior of your car. Did you know that a car is one of the most perfectly created acoustic spaces? They're built to be A, quiet, and two, to absorb sound. So they can be one of the best places to record. Now, obviously, you don't want to be in your shut garage in the winter running the engine of your car recording. But what I'm saying is, when weather permits, you could literally, and I've known people to do this, who will sit in their car and record, and they get an excellent sound. And I want to share with you a little piece of equipment here that you can use in this particular environment. And it's called a Mic Easy M1, and it has a big clip. If you look at this, it will clip mount on. It wasn't made specifically for a car. It was made to be able to mount on stuff, weird stuff that, where you wouldn't usually have a microphone. So you can mount this on your visor, the sun visor, and then hook your little, your microphone in a short, like a desktop mic stand, onto that with a microphone, and you are in business. So that's another option for you. There are options. Believe me, the people who do this, they just figure out a way to do it. And you may feel like you don't have a place right now, but if you experiment and you start investigating and you start trying some stuff, you will find a place in which you can work. All right. So that's the quiet side of the coin. Let's talk about the acoustic treatment or the sound absorption side of the coin. And yes, absorbing audio is kind of like a sponge absorbing water. That's what we want to happen. Otherwise, you get reflections, otherwise known as reverb. And that's why when people, they record and they sound like this, they get this big hollow sound as their voice bounces off the walls. And we don't want that, because remember, your audio is the biggest killer of your voiceover career. That's got to be right before anything else is right. So what do we use to treat the space? Here are some options for you. There's acoustic foam, tiles, and panels. There are YouTube videos that will show you how to build your own panels if you want to do that. Let me warn you of something, and this is just something I learned the hard way, that not all acoustic foam is created equal. Earlier in my voiceover career, I thought that it was. And so I went on Amazon and I bought a boatload of acoustic foam, really cheap. And I bought the thick stuff, the 4-inch thick, thinking I was getting a great deal. And I was so excited. And the stuff, it's virtually useless. I mean, it helps a little bit, but it's not very helpful at all. And what you want to get is a thick, dense acoustic foam. A couple of companies that you might want to look into. One is Audimute, AUDIMUTE.com. Audimute, AUDIMUTE.com. The other is Auralex, AURALEX.com, Auralex. And those guys make some quality products. It's going to cost you a little more, but if you buy cheap foam, you're literally wasting your money. So don't even bother. But you don't have to buy acoustic foam. That's just one option. There are acoustic blankets that you can buy. And again, they're not going to be super cheap, but these things work. They're very sound absorbent, but you can go more of a budget route. And I've done this before, moving blankets. Earlier on in my career, I bought a bulk of moving blankets off of Amazon, and they work nicely. And I've got students who have literally built a DIY booth with PVC pipe. They just created a rectangular size booth frame out of PVC, and then they covered it in moving blankets. And the moving blankets really knock the sound waves down. So that can be a really good option. And you may have to play around with all of this, meaning, is one blanket enough? Do I need to have it 2 blankets thick or 3 blankets thick? And again, you're going to have to experiment with all of that. But it's another option for you. Another is a mattress topper. And again, I would stay away from the really thin, really cheap mattress toppers. But we've got here at the house, we've got like an old 4-inch mattress topper, like thick memory foam. And I don't know. My wife had it laying out. I don't even remember that we ever used it. But for some reason, she had it out to put it in storage. And I said, "Can I have that?" Because I'm always looking for stuff that might work. So I'm thinking about, I've got this 4-inch thick memory foam that's really thick and dense. And I want to try to I'm going to experiment with a new mobile setup where maybe I take like a big cardboard box and I line it with these, and I'm always experimenting, trying to find things that work. So it's something, again, mattress topper, if it's thick and dense enough, can work for you. And then there's also, you've got some other paid solutions like Chaotica Eyeball, and chaoticaeyeball.com is the website where you can go. And it's an acoustically designed, what looks like a Nerf ball. It's about the size, it's between like a grapefruit and a volleyball in size. It's big enough to fit over top of a microphone. And you speak into the blue thing that you see is like a windscreen. And what it does is it helps to block out some noise, but it mostly helps knock down sound reflections. Um, and if you use something like that, just a quick note, I own one of these. I own a lot of what I talk about because I've experimented with everything. And these do work, but it does suck up a lot of the high frequencies, the treble, the high end. And it can make things sound a little muddy. So you have to, when you use something like that, you may have to compensate with equalization to bring down that bass end and maybe bring up the high end a little bit. Okay, so let me talk to you for just a couple of minutes about my mobile rig, because this might be a good solution for you as well. A couple of years ago, my wife and I bought a condo in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And I like to spend as much time as I can there. We live in the Chicago area. I'm a Midwest guy. I grew up in the Midwest, but frankly, I do not like the Midwest. I don't like the weather. I don't like snow. And so this was a good option for us. And so with that being the case, when we go down there, I've been known to spend, a few weeks at a time down there. And when I'm down there, I'm not just vacationing. I mean, I'm working full time. Usually, I may take a day off here or there, but I'm usually just carrying my full workload when I'm down there. So I needed something that just wasn't a temporary solution, but that I could treat as if I was going to work there forever. It had to be that good. So, and by the way, before I explain it, let me tell you that if you want to see more in depth on this, if you go to YouTube and just search my channel, and my channel is my name, Bill DeWees. And then if you search within my channel, just look for mobile rig, and you'll find 2 videos. I did one this year and then one last year as well. I did like 2 tours, so you can actually get a better look. But what I did was, there was a couch in the living room, which my wife hated. When we bought it, it was made out of wicker and had these big, thick cushions. And I thought, as I always do when I see something, oh, that would be good for a recording studio. So I grabbed the cushions, and they're sitting on a card table. I've covered the card table with towels, beach towels, so that it would absorb my voice and not reflect off the plastic surface. And I built it, 3 walls and a ceiling. Literally, that's what it is. And then I put my equipment in there, all my regular equipment in there. And as you can see, my computer sits on the outside of it, but I have a USB cord running to inside of there, where I have a computer monitor. Inside meaning inside the cushions. And then I've got a little USB port where I can plug my my mouse and my keyboard into that. And so I literally work there. Now, in addition to that, something else that's important when you're working remotely like that is what you have behind you. Because what happens is the sound can bounce off the back wall and create problems as well. And I've learned that the hard way. So I took some of my cheap acoustic foam and brought it down, because I didn't need it to be heavy duty treatment. I just needed to get those light reflections that kind of sneak back behind me. So between that and some comforters off the beds that I strung up along, that's a clothes closet there. And I'm just sitting with my back to the closet. So I've got some treatment behind me, and then I've got that little fort in front of me. And I've recorded, oh gosh, I bet I've recorded 100, 200 paid projects in that little fort. And I've never had a client complain or ask me what I was doing. And I've done live sessions in there with clients directing me. And I've never, ever had a complaint about it. And is it as nice as the studio I'm in right now? No, it's not. I mean, it's just not. It's a pillow fort, but it's good enough. And when you're first getting started, I mean, you could use that. And like I said, 100, 200 projects, the client never complained. It never kept me from getting work, and that's what you're after. Again, you can go to my YouTube channel, search mobile rig, and you can get an in-depth tour there. Okay, that's the first, and I've spent a lot of time on that because that is the single most important thing that you've learned tonight. That's not the only thing, but that was the most important thing. So star, highlight, underline, put an exclamation mark after that. Your space, your room is the most important. Now, Next after that comes your microphone. And I always step into the arena of microphones with fear and trepidation because I know many of you would love to hijack the conversation at this point and start talking microphones. There are discussion groups, chat groups, YouTube channels that are dedicated to gear and equipment, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not criticizing that. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm here, if that's kind of like your hobby and you geek out on it, I get that. I'm a musician and I geek out on music equipment. I'm a golfer and I geek out on golf equipment. But the reality is, and I think we all know this, that if I change, I can buy a new set of clubs and tomorrow my golf game will not be any better than it is today. I'll still suck. It is what it is. But there's some things you need to understand about microphones, and we're going to talk about those. Okay. And this is just a collection of pictures. There's so many microphone choices. And one of the questions I get asked the most is, well, Bill, do I have a good microphone? It's a fill in the blank. And usually, I don't know. I think the assumption is that I research every piece of gear and every microphone that comes out. I don't, because I don't need to. I focus on the 20%. I've got a mic. It works great for me. I don't give it another thought. I don't experiment with other mics. I don't care. Now, again, you do what you want to do, but I'm just telling you that there are some, the microphone you have may very well be good enough. But so let's talk about that. All right. A bad microphone in a good space is better than a good microphone in a bad space, because a good microphone will just do a better job of picking up the terrible sound that's happening in your bad space. So your studio, your recording space is always and forever going to be the most important thing. All right. Okay. Now, again, I'm not an audio engineer, so I'm just going to give you, I'm not real deep into the tech talk, but I know enough. I know what I'm talking about, and I know enough to tell you what's good and what to stay away from. So what we've got here, let's look at two primary types of mics. There's USB microphones and there's XLR microphones. Well, and there's also shotguns and dynamic, but let's go back here for just a second. USB microphones, hold on here just a second. I think I actually, yeah, I've got a slide for this, so let me go forwards, but let me just let you take a quick look at this. You've got an assortment of USB microphones. These XLRs are these big diaphragm. There's the shotguns. They kind of look like thick pencils. And then the dynamic mics, which are broadcast mics. Those of you in radio are familiar with the Electro Voice RE20s and RE30s and the Shure SM58s and SM7s. Let's talk about some of the differences between them. And by the way, any of these could be a good option for you. All right. Any of them could be a good option. USB microphones plug directly into your computer via a USB cord. No preamp required. So in other words, what you're doing with USB microphone is you're taking out a piece of equipment. You don't need a preamp, which you will need with the XLR and the shotgun microphone. But you don't with the USB. It plugs directly into your computer. So it's less equipment, less chance of something going bad. It's less tech that you have to know and understand. All right. The XLR condenser microphones do require a preamp, like this microphone that I'm using right now. This is a large diaphragm condenser microphone. Maybe you can see it. There it is, right there. It requires a preamp. And what I mean by that is that the cord runs into this box, which powers the microphone and then runs into my computer. The advantage of having a microphone like I have, it has a broader frequency range. It picks up more of the highs and more of the lows. Although some of the USB microphones are come very close and are very competitive, and I'll share a few of those options with you in just a moment. But there are also shotgun and dynamic mics. Now, the good thing about the shotgun and the dynamic microphones is that they are more directional. Now, a microphone like mine is going to pick up most anything that happens in the room. But if you look at that thin, pencil-y looking like type microphone, well, and also the broadcast, the dynamic microphones, they're meant to pick up what's in front of them. And so let's take a look more specifically at those microphones. Okay, these are Bill's microphone recommendations, all right? If you are just getting started, all right, and you've got a limited budget to work with, or you just don't want to spend more than you needlessly need to. You want a good microphone, but you don't want to just spend a bunch of money for no reason. Here are two really good options. And both of them, in my opinion, are equally good in quality. I own both of these. All right, I've recorded with both of these. I've tested these out, and they both, in my opinion, and I've done over 10,000, voiceover projects. In my opinion, they're indistinguishable from each other, but there's a huge price difference. There's the Apogee Mic Plus, it's $250. The Fifine K670, $50. Now, in terms of how they hold up, wear and tear over the long haul, that I can't answer. So there, it could be maybe a long haul of using them every day. Maybe there's a difference, but for $50, and I've got a lot of students who use the Fifine K670. You buy it on Amazon, by the way. And I tested against this Neumann microphone that I'm using in my studio. And I'm telling you, and I know this is true, 9 out of 10 of my clients would never be able to tell the difference. Now, again, if you want to spend a bunch of money because you feel like it, that's your business. But if you're working with a limited budget, or you just don't want to spend more than you have to because you know you don't need to, these are two really nice options. Another thing is they travel very well. Now, if you have a more noisy environment and you have a hard time with what we call the noise floor, and the noise floor is how loud or quiet your room is when you're just sitting there, not making any noise. And if it's too noisy, then a shotgun microphone could be what you need, because it's very directional. Now, there's a broad range of what you can buy here. I happen to own this microphone again that I'm showing you. I buy a lot of stuff just to experiment and test it out, and I'll use it for videos and certain things. But this Audio Technica AT875R is a $169 shotgun microphone that does a really nice job, and it's perfectly suitable for voiceover. And then we go into the noisy environment, medium budget. Now, if you're getting to the $400 to $450 range, this is broadcast quality stuff. The thing about these mics, as compared to like the large diaphragm mic like mine, is that they don't have the broad frequency response. But again, 9 out of 10 people won't even be able to tell the difference. And frankly, there are pro talent that work with these microphones and do national level work. So these are perfectly suited. So if you're a person who has one of these, this is a perfectly good mic, and it won't pick up a lot of the excess noise in your room because they're built for radio studios. And so they're built not to pick up everything, only what's in front of them. So those are some options. Then you got the quiet environment, low budget. If you want the large diaphragm condenser because you want the broader frequency range, again, which is it's not mission critical. But you can actually, the Marshall MXL series of microphones start at $99. So you can get good quality at a really low price. And before you snub your nose at a Marshall MXL microphone, let me tell you that my very first microphone was a Marshall MXL 2001. It's so old they don't even make it anymore. You can buy that microphone online. You can only find them used now. You can't buy them new because they don't make them. Starting at about $30. I recorded national TV commercials with that microphone. Now, I'm not recommending you go out and buy it now. I mean, you can, it will work perfectly well, but I'm also telling you those USB microphones that I talked about will work perfectly well. And if you've got, a bunch of money and you have a super quiet, well-treated environment and you want to go all out, then, there's the large diaphragm condenser, this is the mic I use, the Neumann TLM 103. It's $1,000, and you could go upwards of $5,000 to $10,000 or more if you wanted to on a microphone. But what I'm telling you is, you've definitely bypassed diminishing returns at that point. Okay, so let's go into the second link of your audio chain. It's your preamp. All right, if you are using a USB mic, actually what I should have said is you don't need it if you're using a USB mic. So if you're using a USB microphone, you do not need a preamp, as I mentioned earlier. I'm just going to delete that right there. You only need a preamp if you're using like the large diaphragm or the shotgun microphone. And there are many options out there. And there's a little quick diagram. What the preamp does is you plug your microphone into it and it powers the microphone. There's not an off-on switch on these microphones. They're powered through these preamps. And then your audio goes through the preamp and into your computer via a USB cable or a Thunderbolt cable. Perhaps you can choose the options that you want there. And I've got a few recommendations on that. So if you need a preamp, a couple to keep in mind, and this is probably my highest recommendation. I say starting with a limited budget, but it doesn't matter. I mean, this is a great. I used one of these things for years, and they're fantastic. The Focusrite Scarlett series, and the Solo, it means the Solo is just one channel. If you were doing music and you needed 2 or 3 or 4 channels, so you could plug in multiple microphones and guitars and stuff, but for voiceover, you just need a Solo. It's $100, a little bit less than $100. And the bonus is that it's USB powered. What that means is you don't need electricity to turn it on. When you plug it into your computer, it gets the power from your computer. So if you're traveling and you just need something lean, clean, fewer cables, the better. The Focusrite Scarlett's really good, and it's nice and quiet too, in terms of any kind of noise that it may generate in powering your microphone. It's a good option. If you want to get into the higher budget stuff, oops, I'm so sorry, got ahead of myself. This is what I use now. It's the Universal Audio Apollo Twin. I've only been using this maybe 4 or 5 years. Um, and I mean, it's great. It's it's overkill. It's not necessary. The reason I got it is because I'm a musician. That's one of the main reasons. And I like to do, all my plugins for my music and stuff. But with VoiceOver, it allows me to run my audio plugins in real time. And we'll talk more about plugins in just a moment. But again, I'm just sharing with you because people ask me what I use. But this is not a requirement. This will work perfectly fine for you. All right. Now let's talk about my headphone and monitor recommendations. Okay, very easy. I recommend that you don't use earbuds. Now, I say that, and I literally went through a couple of years where I used my iPhone earbuds. They were lightweight. I was doing a lot of long form narration. It was comfortable. But what I found out was that I was not able to hear my audio as well as I thought that I could. And I later had some problems with my audio that I didn't realize I was experiencing. So I'd already sent out a bunch of stuff, and I think it did not help my cause. I'll just put it that way. You really can't hear what's going on. You need some decent sounding, and that's all I'm going to say. I mean, you could get into reference monitors and studio monitors. Really, all that matters is if it's a decent quality that you would enjoy listening to music with, and it can be on ear or over ear, not earbuds, but it goes on or over your ear. Those headphones for voiceover will work perfectly fine because we're not worried about mixing music, and this is not music production, it's voiceover. All we're dealing with is our voice. So you need to be able to hear to know if there's noise, is there mouth noise that I'm making? Is there something going on that I need to be aware of? And these kind of headphones will allow you to do that. Studio monitors, meaning studio speakers, you do not need them. I've got them, but I don't use them for voiceover. People ask me and I say, yeah, I've got them, but I have to qualify. It's not because of voiceover. I use it for music, and I'm also a demo producer. So I do voiceover demos. And for those, I need monitors because there's a lot of music, a lot of sound effects, a lot of stuff going on. So for mixing and mastering, I need that. But for my voiceover work, absolutely not. All you need are headphones. All right. Let's talk about DAW, digital audio workstations, recording software. Okay, there's a lot of them out there. There's, and again, if this was an open discussion and everybody's giving their input, we would have, 10, 15 recommendations. And if you've got something you love, that's great. I'm not here to convince you need to use another one. The truth is, all DAWs, digital audio workstations, will record the same quality audio. We're not talking about differences in quality of audio. We're talking about differences in workflow and ease of use, and features, different things that you can use to work with the audio. So whether you use Reaper, whether you use Logic, whether you use Pro Tools, and by the way, if you don't use Pro Tools right now, do not buy Pro Tools for voiceover. The only reason is it's a beast. I mean, it's great for music production, but it's overkill for voiceover. If you've got it and you know how to use it, that's great. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's great. It's just much more complex than needed for voiceover. You can use GarageBand. My recommendations, what I use is Adobe Audition. It costs $20 a month. It's software, and maybe it's gone up a few bucks, but that's the last time I checked, it was $20 a month. It's software as a service, meaning you basically rent it or lease it on a monthly basis. I like it because number one, I've used it since the beginning of my career, but the reason I keep using it is because it's built for voice recordings. A lot of DAWs are built for music production. And so the feature set on this is built specifically for voice. So there's so many tools in here that I can use in cleaning up my audio and in editing my audio and making it sound like I want. My workflow's easy, it's fast, I like it. Now, my other recommendation is Audacity. It's it's a fine DAW for voiceover, and it's free. You could literally go on Google and just search Audacity download, and you can download it tonight, whether you use Windows or PC, or a Windows PC or Mac or even Unix. It's open source, and because it's open source and free, you'll find hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of free training and tutorials on YouTube. So that makes it appealing, and I know a lot of pro voice talent who use Audacity with great success. So just because it's free doesn't mean it's good. It'll get the job done. It will sound every bit as good as any other DAW. Now, I want to make you aware there are some bonus videos that you'll be getting access to within the next week or so that will allow you to dig into some other things. And by the way, we're not wrapping up now. I've got some other material to cover, but in case you've got questions going on in your mind and say, well, why haven't you talked about this or that? I'm going to be giving you access to videos. You can watch these whenever you want for as long as you want, forever. Things on how to determine your noise floor. Actually, my son is a formally trained audio engineer. I wish he had been, when I started in voiceover, he was just a little boy. So I wish he'd have been, a pro audio guy back then. He could have really helped me out a lot. But now he is, and that's what he does. And he helps people. He helps voiceover talent with their audio. And so he and I sat down to talk about some stuff, and then he recorded some things on his own. But you're going to get these videos talking about how to determine your noise floor. Again, and just briefly, again, noise floor is the noise that's generated in your room when you're not making any noise. In other words, if I sat here and held my breath, what you just heard, which you probably couldn't distinguish anything, but that's my noise floor. It's measured in decibels. And what we want to do, and again, these videos will cover this, but you want to get that noise floor to about minus 60 dB. And again, in the video, we'll go through and show you how to do that, and actually setting up your microphone and how to set your sound levels. And there's some Adobe Audition 101 videos and more. So it goes beyond just what I talk about tonight to make sure you have access to all the information that you're going to need. But let's talk a little bit about setting audio levels. And again, then you'll have the video resource that you can go to for a little bit of a deeper dive and go back and look at again and again if you want. When you're setting your audio level, you will be doing that using the gain control on your preamp. If we go back, let me see if I can just quickly find that preamp right here. See the big knob on the right? I take that back. It's the green knob on the left. It's always a knob. That is your gain. In other words, that you can think of it as volume, but it's really not so much volume. It controls how much audio goes into the recording software, into the computer, and into the software. So that's the knob. If you're using a USB microphone, like an Apogee or a Fifine K670, the actual gain knob or dial will be found on the microphone itself. But the idea is you want that audio when you're recording yourself, you want your audio to peak at about minus 3 dB. So what I've put up here is a VU meter. Okay, so for instance, what I'd be doing right now is I would hit record on my recorder, and I would start reading a script as if I'm reading it for real, like an audition or a project, and I'm going to watch this little meter that you're looking at right now. And I don't want that little black needle, I don't want it bouncing much above the 3. See where it's at right now between 3 and 4? That's the minus. That black 3 is minus 3 dB. So when our audio is done, we want that audio peaking at about minus 3 dB. Okay, so again, the video will actually take you through the process, but I just want to give you an idea of what you're looking for. So again, we're using the little gain knob to control the audio, to feed it into the digital audio workstation so that it peaks at about minus 3 dB. Now let's talk a little bit about audio processing. There are 4 things we're going to talk about. I like to keep things as simple as I can. But when it comes, and I get this, when it comes to audio, it is fun playing with plugins and hardware and processing. And the things that we talk about, some of this stuff can be done with software, some of it can be done with hardware or both. Most of us nowadays, and some of you guys, you probably have hardware compressors and hardware EQs and all, which is perfectly fine. I just find it easier to use software. So as much as I can, I use software to do all of that for me. So the first thing we want to deal with is noise reduction. Now, remember earlier, I talked about making your room as quiet as possible. But the reality is, with few exceptions, it's going to be hard to get it as absolutely quiet as you need it to be. So we're going to need a little help. So how are we going to do that? Well, there is what I consider to be an essential audio plugin called NS1. It's by waves.com. It was on sale this past weekend for like 34 bucks. So you go to the waves.com website and you can check, and it may vary from 34 to maybe close to 100 bucks, but it does go on sale very regularly. And it's just a piece of software. And the interface looks like what you're just seeing. It's one knob. I like this better than any other noise reduction software, and I've used a number of different programs. This is one knob, and it's the magic eraser of background noise. Now, it's not magic fairy dust, although it comes pretty darn close to it. In other words, if you got motorcycles going by and kids screaming and phones ringing, it's not going to take that out of your recording. But if you just have that constant low end, you can see it, but you can maybe hear it a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit of HVAC running or something like that, just this low level in the background. This Waves NS1 plugin will clean that up. I've never seen anything like it. I absolutely love it. And I recommend that everybody has that. The next thing, and that's the first thing you should do in processing, is make sure if you're going to do any noise reduction, that's the first thing. The second thing is equalization. Okay, so and now we're getting into things that can be a little more complicated if you don't have a background in audio. So I want to keep this as simple as I can because I don't think it needs to be complicated. One of the most important things that you can do is to train your ear. And one of the ways to do that, and maybe the most important way, is to listen to commercials. I remember hearing something a long time ago, which I think was full of wisdom, and that was this. Do you know how bank cashiers are trained to recognize counterfeit bills? It's not by giving them counterfeit bills and learning what they're about. It's by handling real money. The more they handle real money, the more the stuff that's not real, when they come across it, it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right to them. And that's how they become accustomed to the difference between, counterfeit and non-counterfeit. Same thing with audio. If you become a student of this and you listen to commercials, I mean, I'm more interested in commercials than I am television programming. This is where my wife and I diverge and have a difference of opinion. She wants to fast forward. I want to listen. Really tune in and listen to what the voices sound like, how they're equalized, how they're compressed. The more you hear it, the more you'll know it, so that when you're experimenting with your audio, you'll know what sounds right and what doesn't sound right. So a couple of guidelines that I think that you should be aware of. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is they allow way too much bass in their audio. I think men are more guilty of this, generally speaking, than women, because there's this feeling that bass, low end, makes you feel big and powerful. And the reality is it can just muddle up a voiceover. So generally speaking, anything under 100 hertz, and if that number doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry about that. Right now, you can do this by ear. So you don't want that muddy bottom end, and then also you want a little bit of boost in the mid to high, like between 5 to 8 kilohertz. Again, don't worry about the number, but that's where the voice can really, depending on whether you're a man or woman and how high or low your voice is, that's what can really make your voice kind of pop. And so what I did was I took a picture. This is a picture out of Adobe Audition. This is a parametric equalizer. It's a certain kind of equalizer. You may or may not have a parametric equalizer. If you own a DAW, there probably is a parametric EQ within your DAW. So perhaps it would be best to work with that and then compare it against this. Depending on your room, your space, your microphone, your equipment, your voice, this is going to look different for different people. But like for my voice, this is what it would look like for me. As you can see, that blue line on the left side, the low bassy frequencies, I've taken that out of the equation, and I've boosted things up in the mid to high range just slightly. It gives it a little more presence. meaning it can cut through a little better. It makes it more intelligible to people as they listen. Again, this is a very, very general guideline because it's going to be different for everybody. But listen, train your ear, and begin to experiment. But these are general, again, the low end and the high to mid. Those are the two things that you want to definitely key in on. All right. So that's equalization. That's the second thing. There's noise reduction, there's equalization. The next thing is going to be compression. Okay, what is compression? Imagine you've got a chair cushion that's just sitting there minding its own business, and then you sit down on it. When you sit on it, you compressed it. That's what compression is. It's taking that audio signal that you just recorded, your voice, and you're smashing it down. The more you smash it down, the more you compress it. So why in the world would you want to do that? Well, there's a couple reasons. One is it does make the audio more level, which is a good thing. It also, it makes that waveform a little thicker. It adds more punch. It pops out a little more, and it can be, if it's done properly, can sound a little more clear, or a little more clarity and punch. It also has more perceived loudness. By compressing something, it may have the same dB level of something else. In other words, the same volume level, but it sounds louder because it's a thicker waveform and it's coming at you. It's like when you listen to radio. If you listen to pop or rock radio, usually those stations are compressed a lot, and it can create listener fatigue because it's coming at you all the time, pounding in your ears. And that's compression. That's what compression does, and it creates a perceived loudness. And then if you do add these things, you want to check your EQ, again, after the compression to make sure that your EQ is good, because once you start compressing things, it will change the sound somewhat. So you may have to tweak again just to make sure you've got it where you want it. Okay, at the risk of getting overly technical, and again, it depends with compressors. Every compressor is different. Some are just one knob. You just turn one knob. Some have the ratio, and there's threshold, and there's all this stuff. And again, you can get the tutorial or find on YouTube ways to deal with your particular software or hardware, because there's no time to go through everybody's particular brand that you have. But your gain reduction is what you're looking for. In other words, it's that like you're sitting on the cushion and pushing it down. How much reduction do you want? Well, you don't want more than -3 dB. So in other words, on your compressor, in the compressor software, even if it's software, there should be a little button that says GR that you click that will turn your meter from an audio meter or a gain meter to a gain reduction meter. And it will show you the meter will move left when the compressor kicks in. And if it moves too far left, it means you're squishing the audio too much, and it will sound weird. It'll sound, well, the term's pumping. You don't want that. You just want to we want to kiss it with compression. We don't want to squeeze it to death because it will sound bad. So the way we tell that is by watching our meter and gain reduction. We want to watch that little needle bounce down to about -2 to -3 dB. And if we've got that, that's the proper amount of gain reduction. You can see a picture here. The top is uncompressed audio. The bottom is after it's compressed. See how much thicker it is and how much more even it is. And once you do that, and you've done all the things that you need to do, then you'll need to normalize that audio. Now, normalization, I'm amazed at how many questions I get about normalization. People freak out over normalization as if it's like this big process, complicated, and it's not. It's really practically nothing. Think of it this way. It's like raising or lowering the water in a bathtub to the level that you want it. If you put water in your bathtub, it all raises, all the water raises simultaneously at the same time. If you take water out, it lowers simultaneously at the same rate, at the same time. Same thing with audio normalizing. If your audio, let's say it's a little too loud, it goes over -3 dB, or it's a little under that. If you normalize, and usually the normalization is a function within your software. Within Adobe Audition, it's like a preset. I just click normalize -3 dB, and it will take that audio and it will look for the highest peak in the audio, and it will move. So it'll take that highest peak, and then it'll take all the audio and move it up or down at the same rate until it hits -3 dB. So it might mean all the audio comes down a little bit. If it's a little too loud, it'll come down to -3 dB. If it's a little low, it'll bring it up to -3 dB. But it's a one-click function. You click it, or you can even manually raise the entire waveform, raise it or lower it until that top peak hits -3 dB. And if you're off a little bit, it doesn't matter as long as you're close. That's all we're looking at. It's not the big deal a lot of people make it out to be. It's nothing to be afraid of. That's for sure. And again, Alex and I talk about that in the videos that you'll be receiving in a little more detail. Okay, a few more slides here. Mouth noise. Okay. The big thing about mouth noise, be aware of it. We all make it, but be aware of it. Listen for it. Be aware of how the things that you do that cause it. One of the biggest culprits of mouth noise is simply too much movement in your mouth that you're not aware of. Practice not touching your lips between phrases and sentences. When I read a script, let me turn my camera on. If you watch me read a script, every time I pause at a sentence or punctuation of any kind, here's what my mouth looks like. My lips never touch. Because if my lips touch and open my mouth, I just have mouth noise. I don't, between phrases, I don't allow my tongue to touch the roof of my mouth. Everything just stays very loose, but I don't allow it to just flop around in there. Because if I touch the top of my mouth with my tongue and open my mouth, I've got mouth noise. To hear me say it makes it sound simple. It's something you have to practice, and what happens after a while, you don't even think about it. But those are two really big culprits. Hydrate, drink plenty of water. For me, I love to chew gum. Chewing gum really helps my mouth noise a lot, but it doesn't everybody. If you Google it, everybody has advice on mouth noise. Granny Smith apples, don't drink milk. But sometimes it's, what works for somebody else may not be what works for you. So you have to experiment. But practice not touching your lips and allowing your tongue to smack against the roof of your mouth. One other final thing in terms of plugins. Here's a little plugin I use called X-Crackle by Waves. It costs about $60. It was built to take out the snap, crackle, pop of vinyl records, but you can put it on a voiceover, and it's like fine grit sandpaper. And it just takes out some of that extra snap, crackle, pop. It may not take out all your mouth noise. It's not the first line of defense. It's the last line of defense, but it puts kind of a finishing touch on it. Breaths, don't overly be concerned about breaths unless if you're doing like a short form, 60 seconds or shorter commercial. Then you need to, you can go in and take breaths out. And again, in the videos that you'll receive, I go into more detail about how to use room tone to do that. But what I want to tell you tonight is that anything that's like longer than a minute or so, it's okay to have breaths, unless the client says they don't want breaths. But, to have audiobooks with breaths, that's normal. To do long form narration and corporate work with breaths, that's pretty normal. Now, if they're like obnoxiously high, you may have a problem with your compressor, or you may have to practice, controlling that a little bit, or just going back and manually turning those down. But a lot of people, what I hear people do, and this is a huge mistake, is they'll go in and silence between phrases and sentences. That's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Do not silence between breaths. You can use room tone, which is recording the sound of your room when you're not talking and when you're not breathing, and pasting that between the phrases, okay? And if you do opt for de-breathing software, and it is out there, and I use it a lot, be very careful. You always have to proof everything, because de-breathers will take out sounds. It'll think a TH or an SH, as a breath. And you have to be very careful of that, because that happens as well. Let me just share a couple other quick things here. One is in my editing, and again, in the videos, you'll see all this. But the way it took me a long time to figure this out, and you probably are way ahead of me on this, but in case you're not, when I make a mistake, when I'm recording, I click my tongue. Because what that does is it puts a spike in the audio so that I can easily find it. Because for a while I was going back, trying to figure out where my mistakes were, and I had to listen to everything, and sometimes it's just not practical. But if I do that, I can see a big spike in the audio, and I can easily go back through a 1-hour project and take no more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes to edit a 1-hour project, because of the way I've got it set up. When you are doing, when you make a mistake, always pick it up, go back and repeat the beginning of the sentence or add a phrase where there's some sort of punctuation, where you've actually got a real pause. That's the easiest way to do that. Now, I'm going to touch briefly on remote direction and software that's involved. And this will be our last thing for tonight, and then I'll share a few thoughts with you before we wrap up. This is not something you need to worry about early on. This will come later on, but let me just kind of prepare you. I do tons of directed sessions. I've done hundreds of them. And most of the things that I do over telephone and Skype. Of course, Zoom is becoming more popular too. Most of the stuff I've done has not required me to buy something to do it. All right. And Skype is easy. It's free. No special setup required. And actually, when I do a phone session, I did a phone session for a TV promo for Fox News Channel earlier this week, and I just did it over Skype's telephone function. I dialed up the client using the telephone within Skype, and he picked up on his phone, and that was my phone patch. You don't need to buy hardware or fancy software. Skype is perfect for what we call, phone patches. ISDN, it's a dying technology. I used to have it. I haven't had it in 5 years. I don't use it anymore. What I use is Source Connect to connect with other studios that want to do, where they want to do the recording and just have me do the talking. But you don't need to buy it right offhand. I always wait until somebody says that I waited until somebody hired me to use it, and then I bought it. It's just software. It's really easy to use. It looks like this. You install it, and then you just connect with each other over it. And again, there are tutorials online, and it's dead simple. I mean, your 5-year-old can do this. Source Connect is super awesome. It's super easy. The quality is great. It's high. There's Ibdiddle. I've used it a few times. I've never bought it. Of all the thousands of projects I've done, I've maybe had 2 clients that had me use it, and they just sent me a link to click on, and it automatically connected me. So you don't need to my point is you don't need to go out and buy all this stuff. Okay, you have Skype, you're good. All right, because that takes care of Skype calls, it takes care of phone calls. And if somebody wants to do Zoom, that's easy and free too. Other than that, ISDN is the big one. I'm sorry, not ISDN, Source Connect. And with Source Connect, you can actually do a patch into somebody with an ISDN anyhow. So you don't need ISDN at all. Source Connect is this thing, but again, you don't need to worry about that until somebody's ready to use it. I mentioned my son earlier. I'm going to put his email up here. He's a tech guy for hire. He works with a lot of voiceover talent, and I put his rates up here. But if you ever want to contact him about something for a deeper dive, it's alex@BillDeWees.com. Okay, so this has been a lot of information. My greatest fear is that, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed, but again, I'm focusing on the things that matter. So if I didn't talk about it, it's probably not mission critical. All right. But again, if it's something you want to know about or you're not sure, make sure you make a note. You can bring it back with you the last week. And we're going to cover everything in week 4 when it comes to questions and
Hey,
such.
Bill?
Yes.
I have a question that people might be asking. This is Fred, by the way.
Yeah, everybody meet Fred.
Hey, how are you? So I think that people might be asking, when you talk about a directed session, number one, what is it? And number two, when you're using Skype for that directed session, you are recording the audio and then sending it to the client. The client is not using the Skype to record audio on their end, correct?
I'm glad you said that. Yes, Fred, that's a really good point. That's exactly right. If you're using a telephone or Zoom or Skype, yeah, you're doing the recording on your end. They're directing you so you can hear them on the headphones, but you're recording and then you're sending the audio afterwards. That's a really good point. And with Source Connect, it's the opposite. The client's recording on their end. All you have to do is talk into the microphone.
And then one last point before you tell people what's coming up next week. Of all these items that you mentioned, many of which had price tags associated with them, we don't want to give people the impression, do we, that they need to buy anything other than a mic, their existing laptop, and go into their closet or well-treated space to start recording. Would that be accurate?
That is absolutely accurate. I was trying to find the picture that I was showing, or I was just talking about the microphone and the computer. I mean, literally, it was the McDonald's picture. You can literally, for the cost of this class and a microphone with your computer, you can be in business. I want to share some options just so you would know, but yes, don't let that make you think you got to go out and buy all this stuff.
I'm done.
All right. Hey, do we want to cover that other thing we were talking about? The IKEA thing? Okay. Next week, we are going to.
Yes. Go ahead. Sorry, I was muted.
No, that's okay. Okay. I thought maybe you were segueing into that. So that's why I just wanted to make sure I didn't step on you there. Okay. So yeah, before we get into next week's material, this course, as you bought this course, you were given other options of other things that were available, and that some of you took advantage of that, some not. And it really just depends on where you're at. And Fred and I were talking before this, and he was sharing with me kind of his example, of IKEA. And some people, when they go to IKEA, they buy the furniture, they go home, and they can figure everything out themselves. Whereas if I understood him correctly, that's not his situation. He needs to find somebody to help him, hire him to help him to do all that, to actually make all of that make sense and to do that. And my point is, it's different for everybody. Some of you guys, you're going to take this $97 course, and 3 years from now, you're going to be making a six-figure income, and you're not going to need any additional help from anybody. And that is awesome and good for you. But it doesn't work that way for everybody. Some will need additional help with certain things, certain areas, a deeper dive. And that's why we're offering different things that are a different level of training to go deeper into this, leading up to, and I've got the full-blown thing that I call the voiceover blueprint, which is a comprehensive teaching, coaching, and mentoring program. But tonight I wanted to mention, for those of you who are thinking about, this is for me. I know this is for me, and I feel like I need to do or think about doing a deeper dive and getting the help to really make this happen. Fred has got a link. Am I right, Fred? You have a link you're going to share in the chat?
I do. And again, this is something that if you went through the process, I know we hit you with a lot of different offers there as you came into the class, because like Bill said, some people are at different levels. This is a link to what you've seen before, but because you're in the class, we cut the price about the cost of the course itself. So I'm sending you all a link right now. And this link, Bill, is the offer that has to do with the 60-day access, which just briefly explain, and then we'll tell people what it's happening next week. We're not going to, and again, we're not twisting your arm to try and buy stuff. You may need nothing other than this class.
Right. And the 60 days all access, this is 60 days all access to my biggest comprehensive voiceover blueprint, which is it's my massive library of all my training programs. So when I say massive, I mean it's like going to voiceover university, streaming format, accessible whenever you want. But on top of that, I provide between 15 to 18, sometimes up to 20 live group coaching sessions like this per month for this group. I mean, I've been doing this for like 3 years. I mean, we've done hundreds and hundreds of hours of this. So you have access to that. All the archived stuff we've already done, as well as the stuff that we continue to do every month that covers marketing and business and performance and, all of those things. And then the private Facebook group where you've got the community, but also as I worked, like today I streamed, I think I counted 5 jobs I did today. And I streamed into the group, so they saw me as I worked today. So you get to see what it's like as I work and all the stuff that I do, auditioning and working on projects and dealing with clients and all of that. So this would give you 60 days all access to that, to learn, to absorb, to be a part of the community. And again, Fred's put the link in the chat, so you can check that out.
And just before you go to next week, I just might add to people, look, if you're really super excited about this, and you want to turbocharge this whole thing and get it moving faster, this is for you. If you're still at the I'm just curious stage, this is not for you. Okay? I just want to make that clear. We don't want people to get into any of our materials at a level they're either not comfortable with, not able to afford, or is not appropriate.
Well said. Yeah, thanks, Fred. Very, very well said. Well, next week, as you may be able to tell from this awesome graphic, we move into the performance end of things. What do you do when you get behind the microphone? What's going to make the difference between getting and not getting the job? How can you make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward? That will be into next week. And guys, thanks again. So good to have you here. I'm excited and can't wait till next week. Talk to you soon.